What's up, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of the Sit Down. As always, if you enjoy this video, please make sure you hit that like button and let me know what you think of today's very interesting discussion in the comment section below. If you're new around here, you just haven't done it yet, or you're living on a rock and seeing this video for the first time, I don't know what you're waiting for. Hit that subscribe button below now so you never miss another sit down video. Also, if you enjoy cigars, spring is here. There's nothing better than a cigar on the patio, porch, or stoop. Make sure you check out our signature sit down cigar available now from Pravada Cigar Club. The link to buy is in the pinned comment of this video. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into another very interesting organized crime topic. And on a recent YouTube show from the Skinny with Joey Merlino, Merlino has shouted out a person called Marty, and he has called for the state of New Jersey to release him from prison. Who exactly is Marty Taccetta? Today we get into it. The story of Martin Taccetta next on the sit down. Martin Taccetta was born May 2nd, 1951, in the New Jersey city of Newark. It was said that the early life of the Taccettas was in and around 14th Avenue in Newark. Now, eventually, though, in the 60s, the Taccettas would move to the Newark neighborhood of Vailsburg. Now, Taccetta's father, it was said, was a member of the Mafia, a reputed member of the Mafia. For years, the Lucchese crime family has had a faction in the New Jersey area, most notably in the city of Newark. Now, you cannot talk about Martin Taccetta without mentioning Taccetta's brother, Michael. And we'll learn throughout this episode that these two were thick as thieves coming up in the Mafia. Now, it was Taccetta who was older by about 4 years. Now, it's also important to mention, when you mention the Taccettas, you have to mention the Pernas. Now, Michael and Martin Taccetta are the cousins of Michael and Ralph Perna. So all of these people are related, and most notably, all of them have become members of the Mafia. Now, it was said that in the early 60s and by the mid 60s, Michael and Martin Taccetta were running the streets with other young hoodlums in the area, most notably Daniel and Thomas Riccardi. Now, Riccardi down the road would be an integral part of the Taccetta crew, and is an important name to remember as the story goes on. Now, eventually, the Taccettas would catch the eye of very powerful Lucchese mobster Anthony Tumac Asatura. Now, we will do a show, most notably on Tumac Asatura at some point. Now, he ran a huge gambling and loan sharking operation out of North Jersey. He would essentially take over for longtime New Jersey captain for the Lucchese family, Joseph Joe Abate. Abate would retire by the mid 70s. Now, Abate at one point, he was born in like the late teens. He was at one point affiliated with Al Capone way back when, but Abate retires and Tumac Asatura takes over. Tumac has his own crew, and eventually by the mid 70s, Tumac Asatura has to flee New Jersey due to the fact that in 1973 he's indicted by the federal government. And by this point, in the early 70s, the Taccettas are in their 20s. They are learning the business. They're becoming good earners in their own right. And Michael Taccetta, Martin's brother, is essentially the number two to Tumac. He was a protege, if you will. And these guys are making hay in the Newark area, making a bunch of money as high-ranking associates of Tumac Asatura. Michael Taccetta would ultimately get in control when Tumac flees. Now, in early 1978, it was said that on the wings of Tumac Asatura, Michael and Martin Taccetta would become made members of the Lucchese crime family. Also made in early 78 in that ceremony were people like Anthony Bowat Barada, Paolo LaDuca, as well as Angelo Defendis. All of these individuals got their button that night. Michael and Marty Taccetta were made members of the mob, and once becoming made they are in control of big money. They make a very lucrative OC network in and around Newark, and eventually it would become known as the Taccetta Group Enterprise. Now, the feds allege that these guys were doing everything from loan sharking to extortion to credit card scams, bookmaking, extortionate business takeovers through violence and threats, etc. Now, keep in mind, all of the money was flowed up through tribute payments to Florida to their quasi captain and person finally in decision making, Anthony Tumac Asatura. So Asatura was down in Florida, but he was still making a bunch of money as the quasi leader. But the guy on the street, the acting street head, was Michael Taccetta alongside Marty Taccetta and people like Michael Perna. So for Martin Taccetta, he was making good money. He was married by this point, and he lived in and around Florham Park in New Jersey. Now, one thing that Marty Taccetta decides to do by the early 80s as a made member of the mob is he looks to start muscling into the Joker poker machine business, which, look, I've discussed this in shows before. The Joker poker machine business by this point is a very lucrative operation. I mean, one unit can make thousands of dollars, on a monthly basis. So you put, dozens or hundreds of these around the area, you can make all sorts of money. What Taccetta essentially does is he starts believing and finding out that there was one company that was manufacturing all of these Joker poker machines. It was a company called SMS, and it was owned by a person called Sal Mirando, as well as two brothers, Vincent and Pasquale Storino. They were ultimately involved with another person called Vincent Karada as well. All these guys were making money manufacturing these Joker poker machines and getting rid of these machines. And essentially, mobsters were buying them up and putting them in area businesses. Everybody was getting a piece and everybody was making money. Michael Taccetta decides that, or Martin Taccetta decides that he wants to start muscling in on this. He attempts to seize control of the business, but what he doesn't know is all of the guys involved with SMS on record, at least allegedly, with the Bruno Scarfo crime family. We have to remember that the Bruno Scarfo Philly mob had a faction in Newark as well. Now, it was said that the Storinos and the SMS business were on record and kicking up to, and I know this is a bad picture, it's one of the only I could find, with a person called Joseph Sedano, a.k.a. the Nodder. He was involved with the Bruno Scarfo family. He was a made man, and these guys were kicking up to Sedano and another person involved with the Philly mob. Now, Taccetta doesn't know that. This is where, this is according to Phil Leonetti, who, again, Leonetti is either believed or not believed. He would say that he would first meet Martin Taccetta for this reason, due to the fact that Leonetti gets involved because the Philly faction says, hey, there are people trying to muscle into this business. They're trying to muscle into the Joker poker machine business. You need to intervene here. Leonetti claims he met Taccetta in and around 1981, and he would ultimately meet up with him several times in 1984 to kind of muscle out this business. This was a big problem. The family sit down. Now, I also want to make it clear, according recently to a Joey Merlino YouTube show, he would state that around his 18th birthday, he would actually meet Marty Taccetta, and they would go to a restaurant in New Jersey called the Belmont Tavern. Now, keep in mind, Joseph Merlino was born in 1962, so that would make sense in this timeline at around 1980. As we know with Joey Merlino, if you've ever looked into his past, he's very close to the Pernas. He obviously is very fond of Martin Taccetta, and he made it clear in that recent video that he had known Taccetta for decades, quite frankly. And this would add up to the fact that, look, regardless of what Merlino says now about Leonetti, Joey's father was very close to Leonetti, Nicky Scarfo. So back to the sit-downs. Down the road, Leonetti would claim that he would also have a sit down on record about the Joker poker machines in and around 1984 in Atlantic City at a restaurant called Angeloni's, which is no longer around, but it was in Ducktown, which is where Leonetti and Scarfo were based. They would meet him and Taccetta and discuss the Joker poker business. Now, Leonetti would claim, according to him, that he never made it clear that the guys involved with SMS were actually under the Philly family. They would have essentially 5 meetings. And at the first meeting at Angeloni's restaurant, Taccetta would inform Leonetti that the Lucchese family, particularly himself, wanted control to shake down SMS. Now, as I said at the time, Leonetti knew but did not tell Martin Taccetta that Sal Mirando was an associate of Joseph the Nodder Sedano, and that Sedano was part of the Bruno Scarfo crime family, and that they derived income for the family by permitting SMS to operate in New Jersey. Now, eventually, Leonetti, as we know, would flip, and under his direct examination, he would explain that Martin Taccetta, he would kind of detail that all these guys were under the Bruno Scarfo family and that they were making around $1,000 to $5,000 a month income from Mirando and certain machines. Now, also at that meeting, Leonetti would claim that Martin Taccetta sought to determine whether he had heard certain people had these guys on record with them. When Leonetti responded, "I don't think so," Martin then said, "Well, we just killed one of the guy's uncles. The guy's uncle, Jimmy Sinatra." Now, this is all what Leonetti says, and we'll figure out who Jimmy Sinatra is. I want to get into the time that would change Taccetta's life up until now. I had mentioned earlier that the Storinos were involved with this. Vincent and Pasquale Storino, they were involved with this SMS video poker machine business. They had an uncle, Vincent Craparata. Okay, Craparata was getting tribute payments for all this. These guys were all involved in this business. Taccetta starts shaking down Craparata, right? Allegedly. He doesn't pay. The Taccetta crew starts to get annoyed with this guy. And eventually, on June 12th, 1984, Vincent Craparata is beaten to death at an Ocean County, New Jersey auto sales business in Dover Township, New Jersey. Essentially, witnesses say Craparata is at the business when allegedly Thomas Riccardi walks in and beats him up with a golf club. According to the authorities, the driver in this case is Martin Taccetta. Now, I'll get in. Taccetta makes it clear he had an alibi and that he was nowhere near this murder when it happened. Now, ultimately, the talks between the video poker stuff would continue. Now, the problem that Taccetta has, and this comes from multiple sources, including Leonetti as well as Little Al Diarco. 2 weeks later, Leonetti would claim that a Philly mobster, Charles Costello, came to him. Now, it's alleged that Costello was also involved with Joe Sedano in having those associates in that video poker business under their control. Costello allegedly tells Leonetti, quote, that Pat Storino came to him and was scared to death because he had heard that Tom Riccardi killed his uncle, Vincent Craparata. Now, also, according to Little Al Diarco, who would flip, he would say that around the same time, Martin Taccetta allegedly told him, quote, that Riccardi had the police after him because he blank whacked that guy Craparata. So these are two different people saying that this all went back to Riccardi and Taccetta, and that they were the ones that whacked Vincent Craparata, including Taccetta, who allegedly told Diarco that that's why Riccardi had the police after him. Now, again, as I said, sit-downs would continue with this whole Joker poker machine stuff. The brass of the Philly mob, including Nicky Scarfo, as well as Tony Ducks for the Lucchese family, they would continue to figure all this out. Now, in 1985, August of 1985, 26 people, including Marty Taccetta, are indicted in an 81 count indictment involving various racketeering and organized crime charges. Also arrested was Michael Taccetta, Tumac Asaturo, and Michael Perna. So everybody gets jammed up in this. Ultimately, down the road, the trial for this whole thing would begin in 1986. The trial would last all the way till August of 1988. It would go down as one of the longest trials in U.S. history. And in the end, all 20 defendants ultimately were acquitted. Everyone was acquitted, which is quite interesting, including Michael and Martin Taccetta. Now, it would be said that the jurors just didn't believe the myriad of witnesses, some of which were drug addicts, killers in their own right. These guys all beat the rap. So they all head back to the street. Now, by the late 80s, though, the problems come due to the fact that during all this, a split happens between the Taccetta organization and Tumac Asaturo. And once Anthony Casso and Vic Amuso take over, they want a bigger piece of the pie. So a big kind of internal split happens, to which at one point, Anthony Casso has that legendary line of, let's just whack the whole Jersey crew. He wanted to kill everybody, including, most notably, Tumac Asaturo. Now, cooler heads would ultimately prevail, and down the road, Michael Taccetta would fall into favor and eventually got with the program of the Casso and Amuso regime. And eventually, Michael Taccetta was made the head capo of the Jersey crew alongside Michael Perna and his brother, Marty Taccetta. Now, eventually, Michael Taccetta would go to prison, and by the early 90s, the quasi-captain of the New Jersey crew is allegedly Martin Taccetta. Now, Taccetta would face brushes with the laws in the early 90s, at one point even under indictment for conspiracy to defraud $400,000 in phony auto insurance claims, though the feds, the state government, they want that slam dunk case. The case is that's going to put Michael Taccetta, Tumac Asaturo, Martin Taccetta. They want the case that's going to put all these guys away forever. They would get that in and around 1981. Alongside his brother, Michael, Martin Taccetta would be indicted for racketeering, drugs, gambling, extortion, as well as the Vincent Karada murder. So this murder comes back to bite the Ricardis, Martin Taccetta, all these guys. And Taccetta has to realize that if he indeed did participate in this, he in his own mind may believe that eventually he may never get out of prison. Now, down the road, ultimately, Martin Taccetta would be found guilty of racketeering and extortion charges, but would be acquitted of the Karada murder. In 1993, it wouldn't matter that he was acquitted. He would ultimately get life in prison plus 10 years. Now, he would be acquitted of the actual murder, but the state of New Jersey contends that his conspiracy, his involvement in Cosa Nostra led to the murder of Karada. So he was basically just as guilty. He would be hit with life plus 10 years. Now, all of the individuals in this case, including Michael Taccetta and Tumac Asaturo, they were all found guilty as well. Though in just 4 days, people would start flipping, including Thomas Riccardi as well as Tumac Asaturo. Now, as far as the Karada murder, Taccetta claims that he was nowhere near the Karada murder, and he was actually at the dentist, to which the FBI has dental records proving that. Now, he would claim, as well as his lawyer, that the FBI doctored and altered the dental records to screw his alibi, essentially. According to his lawyer, Marco LaRocca, he would say, quote, it was doctored to, quote, destroy his alibi. Now, what's interesting here is Thomas Riccardi flipping actually in one way aided Taccetta, and I'm going to tell you how. According to Thomas Riccardi, he would say, involving everyone here, that he and Asaturo told state investigator Marshallonis that the prosecutor's key witness, Philip Leonetti, falsely testified about all the stuff that led to Crapparada's death. In fact, Ricciardi and Asaturo told investigators, which is super interesting, that Philip Leonetti fabricated meetings and conversations that never took place to bolster the prosecution's theory that Ricciardi, Taccetta, and another gangster, Michael Ryan, had killed Crapparada so they could terrorize and extort his nephews and gain a piece of their Joker poker machine. In fact, Ricciardo swore Crapparada's killing was an unplanned accident arriving from his idea to give Crapparada a physical beating as a means of sending him a message to stop claiming he was connected with Ricciardi and not to brag about business dealings he had with me. Now, Ricciardo's actions questionably led to Crapparada's death, and that the cohorts he sent to give Crapparada a beating got carried away and beat him to a bloody pulp, and that Ricciardi could be found guilty of murder for his actions under New Jersey law. He would also say that both he and Asaturo, told authorities that during joint debriefings held over 2 days that we decided to cooperate so that the truth regarding the Crapparada case has continued and that it was suppressed to this day. He would also say in an affidavit, and I'm not talking about Leonetti, I'm talking about Ricciardi at this point, he would say that he told authorities the names of all 4 men who took part in the slaying and that none of them included Martin Taccetta. Quote, he had no knowledge of the Crapparada matter as it was occurring. And this would also lead and lend to the fact that Mr. Taccetta had an alibi and that he was at the dentist. So there's a lot here that probably lead to the fact that Taccetta may have not been involved with this. However, he was serving life plus 10. Ultimately, for Martin Taccetta, he would sit in prison till in and around 2005 when he got some great news. A New Jersey judge would overturn his conviction and Martin Taccetta was released. He would remain on the street for about 4 years until July of 2009, when New Jersey State Supreme Court ordered him to return to prison to serve his life plus 10 years. Now, up until recently, Taccetta has continued to claim that he did not participate in the whacking of Vincent Crapparada. Now, in January of 2024, he would be granted a new evidentiary hearing in this case. Martin Taccetta currently resides at East Jersey State Prison. He is 72 years old. Now, as I said, we have heard a lot recently about this, including support from people like Joey Merlino, who say that this is all nonsense, this is all bullshit, and we can actually believe it. There is a lot of evidence to make it clear that Martin Taccetta was nowhere near this murder. Now, I do want to make this clear. According to the New Jersey State Supreme Court and State Attorney General Ann Milgram, in 2009, when the reinstated Martin Taccetta sentence would happen, she would claim that, quote, for decades, Martin Taccetta was one of the most prolific members of organized crime whose power and control over the Lucchese family threatened the residents of New Jersey and illegally impacted commercial activity. We are gratified that the state Supreme Court's decision will ensure that he will be returned to state prison to serve the remainder of his sentence of life plus 10 years for racketeering and extortion, though he continues to fight for his release. I think at minimum, Marty Taccetta will get a new trial that may lead to him being released from prison. Is Martin Taccetta a convicted mobster? Absolutely. Did he take part in killing Vincent Crapparada? I don't think so. And anyone, regardless of who we think they are, deserves a fair trial in this country. I do want to end this video with some sad news for Marty Taccetta. Sadly, in March of 1991, Taccetta's son, Angelo, who was just 17 years old, died in a car accident not far from his home. Marty Taccetta, on the loss of his son, would say, quote, "When you lose a child, you lose your future. There isn't anything worse." I would like to say rest in peace to the memory of Angelo Taccetta. In the end, we can say all we've said about Marty Taccetta. However, losing a child is so damn sad. And I do honestly hope that if he did not take part in this hit, I hope he is released from prison and he deserves to live out the rest of his life on his own terms. We'll have to wait and see what happens next with Marty Taccetta. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you next week here on the Sit Down.